Yeah.
some rock and roll and rhythm and blues. But when you go in the studio, you have to know what kind of record you're going to make. You can't make a mishmash of different songs for an album.
Right.
He was once the Welsh Tiger of music, a voice so explosive it shook entire halls, hips that ignited a sexual frenzy on the Vegas stage. Women threw lingerie onto the stage, and even Elvis Presley admitted that it was Tom who inspired him to return to live performing. Tom Jones, the embodiment of masculine allure, with a baritone impossible to mistake, sold more than 100 million records, was knighted by the Queen of England, and kept his star burning bright for over 6 decades. Songs like It's Not Unusual and Delilah turned him into one of the most legendary voices of the 20th century. From a poor Welsh miner's son, he rose into the ranks of knighthood. And yet, behind the spotlight was a chain of tragedies too heavy to conceal. A marriage that lasted nearly 60 years but was steeped in betrayal. Love scandals that toppled a Miss World crown. A son out of wedlock, denied for decades. And in the end, the death of his teenage sweetheart wife, leaving him alone with an unbearable emptiness in his London apartment. Now in his 80s, Sir Tom Jones still stands on stage. But beneath the polished suits and a voice etched with life's experiences lies a heart burdened with regret, loss, and an unquenched hunger that can only be called love. The question lingers. Is that voice still a source of strength, or merely his way of clinging to life amid wounds that will never heal? Thomas John Woodward was born on June 7, 1940, in the mining town of Pontypridd, Wales, a place where the air was thick with coal dust, and every man's life was tied to the pits. His family lived in a cramped house on Laura Street, its roof darkened by soot, damp walls clinging to the cold, with nothing but a small coal stove to keep them warm. His father, also named Thomas, was one of the thousands who descended underground 10 hours a day, facing explosions, cave-ins, and the slow suffocation of black lung disease. His mother, Frida, stayed home to raise their son and stretch the meager earnings, quietly holding the family together amid constant hardship. Tom's childhood knew nothing of fancy toys or carefree summers. The most familiar sounds were the whistle of coal trains, the clang of metal from deep underground, and his father's racking cough after every shift. Yet, amid that harshness, Pontypridd still echoed with church choirs and Welsh folk songs, music filled with faith that the community clung to in order to survive. It was there that Tom first discovered a way out for his soul. At just 5 years old, he stunned an entire congregation with his voice. The sound rising from his small chest carried a weight beyond his years, drawing nods of awe from the elders. His mother, rarely able to spare a penny, still saved coins to buy him records or pay for bus fare, so he could sing at local gatherings. His talent was undeniable, but it couldn't shield him from tragedy. In 1952, at the age of 12, Tom contracted tuberculosis, a disease that cast fear of death across the working-class community. He was confined to a small room with only one window looking out onto the street, cut off from the world outside. While friends played football, their laughter drifting through, Tom endured suffocating isolation. Family members wore gloves and masks just to bring him food. For 2 years, he lived like a prisoner in his own home, battling coughs, fever, and the terrifying thought that he might never recover. It was during this bleak confinement that music became his lifeline. His parents bought him a second-hand record player, and day after day, Tom lost himself in the voices of Mahalia Jackson, Little Richard, and Elvis Presley. He sang along, pouring his strength into mimicking every riff, every growl. Within those stifling walls, he forged a fiery voice that would one day carry him out of poverty and illness. When he finally returned to school, Tom found that the world had moved on without him. 2 years of absence left him behind, and his undiagnosed dyslexia made him an outcast in the classroom. Teachers scolded him as lazy, while Tom sank deeper into disappointment. At 16, he left school altogether, turning his back on formal education in search of another path. His teenage years were a struggle for survival. Tom entered the workforce with calloused hands and a string of grueling jobs, hauling bricks on construction sites, cutting fabric in a glove factory, even going door to door trying to sell vacuum cleaners. None of it filled the emptiness inside him. Only music, the same force that had carried him through illness, gave him a sense of purpose. By day, he labored. By night, he sang in pubs and working men's clubs. These smoke-filled rooms where miners gathered to drink away their exhaustion became his proving ground. With a battered microphone and a crackling sound system, Tom's voice rose above the noise. Each song was more than entertainment. It was a declaration. He did not belong in the mines. He was born for the stage. The meager pay from those nights helped support his young family, wife Linda and their newborn son Mark. But more importantly, it gave him a reason to keep chasing his dream. By 1963, that dream grew sharper when Tom joined the band Tommy Scott and the Senators. A little-known group from South Wales, they transformed the moment Tom stepped in. His blazing baritone, wild stage presence, and sheer force electrified audiences. In working men's clubs used to routine nights, his performances were like a storm. From being just another backing singer, he quickly became the band's spiritual leader, the one who made them believe that a voice from a small mining town could reach far beyond Britain's borders. From smoky pubs to local clubs, Tom Jones had become a fixture in South Wales's music scene. But even though his voice could move weary miners to tears after a long shift, he was still just a regional phenomenon. To break free of that small circle, Tom needed something bigger, a decisive push. And fate arrived one night when a London manager happened to be sitting in the audience. The momentum from local clubs eventually carried Tom toward destiny. In 1964, during a performance in Wales, he caught the eye of Gordon Mills, a London music manager who, like Tom, came from a mining background. Mills instantly recognized that this voice could not remain confined to smoky pubs. He brought Tom to the capital, reinvented his image, and, most importantly, gave him a new name, Tom Jones, taken from a hit film of the time. The name was not only memorable, but also warm, earthy, and unmistakably British, setting the stage for a breakthrough no one could have predicted. Just a year later, in 1965, Tom Jones experienced the life-changing moment with the single It's Not Unusual. Originally written for Sandy Shaw, Tom begged for the chance to record it. The result, a blazing, passionate baritone performance, immediately sparked a new wave. On March 13, 1965, the song shot straight to #1 on the UK singles chart and broke into the Billboard Hot 100's top 10 in the US. From an unknown singer from a mining town, Tom Jones suddenly became a transatlantic sensation. That same year, he also left his mark on cinema with two iconic soundtrack songs. The playful, cheeky What's New Pussycat tied his voice to Hollywood charm. But the real shock came with the James Bond theme, Thunderball. While recording, Tom held the final high note so long that he actually fainted in the studio. The engineers thought the session had to be stopped, but that very take was preserved, becoming one of the most dramatic climaxes in Bond soundtrack history. In less than 2 years, Tom Jones had leapt from the smoky bars of South Wales to the global spotlight, becoming a fresh yet commanding figure in the British invasion storming the world. The explosion of It's Not Unusual not only transformed Tom Jones from an obscure Welsh boy into an international star, but also launched a golden run through the 1960s. Just a year later, in 1966, he stepped onto the Grammy stage to claim Best New Artist. At a time when the British invasion was dominated by the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and The Who, the emergence of a solo vocalist like Tom, holding his own against entire bands, was extraordinary. It confirmed he was not just a passing fad, but a true force in popular music. From there came a succession of unforgettable hits. I'll Never Fall in Love Again, 1967, carried the ache of a ballad confession, a surprising vulnerability from a man hailed as a sex symbol. Delilah, 1968, spun a tragic tale of jealousy, passion, and crime, delivered with such raw ferocity that audiences rose to their feet in ovation. Then came She's a Lady, 1971, written by Paul Anka, celebrating modern womanhood, both strong and tender, and swiftly becoming one of his signature songs. These records didn't just sell, they defined Tom Jones as music's lover figure, wild yet romantic, leaving indelible emotional imprints on listeners. But studio triumphs were only half the story. The other half, where he truly built his legend, was on the Las Vegas stage. Beginning in 1967, Tom Jones started a residency at the Flamingo Hotel. At the time, Vegas was the entertainment mecca for already established stars: Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Elvis Presley. Yet before long, Tom carved out his place among them. For 44 years, 1967-2011, he turned the Vegas stage into his personal domain, where audiences came not just to hear music, but to witness raw, primal energy brimming with sensuality. The trademark image of Tom Jones in Vegas. A shirt unbuttoned almost to the waist, tanned chest glistening under the lights, tight leather pants hugging his muscular frame, sweat pouring as he moved. He didn't just sing, he inhabited every motion. A hip swivel, a sly glance, a step toward the edge of the stage sent women screaming into frenzy. Handkerchiefs flew. Lingerie followed. It became the ritual of his shows. Las Vegas gave Tom Jones a crown no award could equal, the sex symbol of an era. Even Elvis Presley, his friend and idol, famously dubbed him the Welsh Tiger. It was more than praise. It was recognition that on stage, Jones embodied an animalistic power, a raw allure that even the king of rock and roll acknowledged. From the coal dust of a mining town, Tom Jones rose to become one of the brightest stars of the British invasion and quickly established himself at the very center of global entertainment in Las Vegas, where he was not just a singer, but a cultural phenomenon. Not only did Tom Jones conquer the stages of Las Vegas, he also found a way to step into the living rooms of millions of American families. In 1969, he launched his own television show, This Is Tom Jones. Running for 3 consecutive seasons until 1971, with more than 65 episodes, the show became a phenomenon in both the UK and the US. Each episode blended explosive performances with intimate conversations, featuring star-studded guests. For Americans, long accustomed to their own homegrown voices, the arrival of this Welsh Tiger, with his booming baritone, wit, and masculine charm, was irresistible. The show's success not only expanded his influence, but also earned him a Golden Globe nomination, cementing Jones as not just a Vegas headliner, but an international entertainer. Yet fame never flows evenly. Entering the 1970s, the tides of music shifted rapidly. Hard rock, disco, and punk seized the spotlight, while Jones's soulful pop sound began to feel dated. Though he continued to release new songs, none matched the impact of Delilah or She's a Lady. His voice remained powerful, but younger audiences were chasing edgier sounds. For Jones, these were years of feeling pushed aside, a bitter silence for someone who had once stood at the very top. In that climate, Jones chose to experiment. In 1976, he surprised everyone by turning to country music with Say You'll Stay Until Tomorrow. What seemed a risky move unexpectedly soared to #1 on the US country charts. It was undeniable proof that Tom Jones could not be boxed into any single genre. He could adapt and conquer even outside his comfort zone. But the light was brief, and in the years that followed, his career continued to stall. By 1986, another devastating blow struck. Gordon Mills, the manager who had discovered Tom and carried him from Welsh pubs to the global stage, died of cancer. For Jones, it was more than the loss of a partner. It shook the very foundation of his career. At that moment, his son, Mark Woodward, stepped in as manager. Their relationship grew from father and son into a partnership, Mark both guardian of his father's career and emotional anchor, helping him regain balance in a difficult period. And then, almost like a miracle, the late 1980s marked a stunning rebirth. In 1987, Boy From Nowhere unexpectedly returned him to the UK Top 40, hinting at a comeback. But the real spark came the following year, when he teamed with Art of Noise to cover Prince's Kiss. Its fiery funk-pop groove, paired with Jones's youthful, magnetic presence in an MTV-saturated music video, stunned the world. The supposedly outdated legend was suddenly one of the sexiest, most relevant icons of the moment. Kiss not only earned him an MTV Video Music Award, but also introduced Tom Jones to an entirely new generation. From what looked like irreversible decline, Tom Jones proved he was no nostalgia act. Even with 50 fast approaching, he could reinvent himself, this time as boldly and fiercely as during his golden years. After that late 1980s renaissance, Tom Jones refused to rest on past glories. Entering the 1990s, he once again showcased his versatility. The pinnacle came in 1999 with Reload, an album of duets with younger stars like Robbie Williams, The Cardigans, and Natalie Imbruglia. The album not only topped the UK albums chart, but also sold over 4 million copies, becoming the most successful record of his career in Britain. Among its hits, Sex Bomb exploded across Europe, turning him, at nearly 60, into a global sensation once more. Through the 2000s and 2010s, Jones continued pushing boundaries. He released Praise and Blame, 2010, a gospel and blues-infused album that stripped his voice bare, gravelly, and lived-in, thrust to the forefront. Initially doubted by his label, its very unfashionableness resonated deeply with listeners, proving again that Tom Jones knew how to wield his voice as a lifeline. Beyond the studio, he appeared at major public events, from Queen Elizabeth II's Diamond Jubilee to high-profile charity concerts, standing shoulder to shoulder with other greats to sing for causes larger than himself. Another turning point came with television. In 2012, Tom Jones became one of the original coaches on The Voice UK. With his silver hair and more than half a century of experience, he brought contestants a kind of mentorship no young star could offer. He quickly became a fan favorite. But in 2015, the BBC abruptly dropped him with only 24 hours' notice, a decision that sparked fierce backlash. Jones openly voiced his disappointment at the lack of respect, but fans rallied to his side. Fittingly, in 2017, he returned to the red chair, reclaiming his place as an irreplaceable part of the show. Even in his 80s, Tom Jones has never stopped reinventing himself. In 2021, he released Surrounded by Time, reinterpreting songs by Bob Dylan, Cat Stevens, and Michael Kiwanuka in his own style. The album soared to #1 on the UK Albums chart, making him the oldest artist in history to achieve that milestone. It was not only a musical triumph, but also proof of the resilience and timeless allure of a true legend. Behind the dazzling lights of the stage, Tom Jones' private life began with an innocent romance in his mining town youth. He first met Linda Trenchard at the age of 12 on the narrow streets of Pontypridd as they walked home from school. Young Thomas John Woodward had nothing then but a shy smile and a booming voice in the church choir. Yet the gaze he cast upon Linda was filled with certainty. Growing up just a few hundred yards apart, their chance encounters at the corner shop or in church gradually blossomed into a tender teenage love. By the time Tom was 16, that love took a turn from which there was no return. Linda became pregnant. In 1950s, Britain, an unmarried girl under 17 carrying a child was nearly unthinkable. Both families pressured them, and Tom, still a boy with no clear future, was forced to shoulder the responsibility of manhood. In March 1957, they married hastily at the Pontypridd Register Office, No flowing gown, no lavish reception, just a union forged by pressure, young love, and the imminent arrival of a child. A few months later, their only son, Mark Woodward, was born. Mark's presence not only bound the marriage, but became Tom's greatest motivation. He once said, "I became a man very quickly because when I looked at my son, I knew I had no other road but success." In time, Mark would step into the role of manager, walking beside his father through the long arc of his career. While Tom was swept into the whirl of stage lights, Linda chose a life in complete contrast. She rarely appeared in public, seldom joined him at shows or interviews, and always kept silent before the press. Even in the grand houses of Los Angeles, she lived simply, almost detached from show business. Quietly, she kept the household, raised their son, and became the one anchor Tom could always rely on. Through all the turbulence of an entertainer's life, Linda was the silent stronghold, an uncelebrated presence, yet irreplaceable through nearly 6 decades of marriage. From that modest home in Pontypridd, only a few years after their rushed wedding, Tom Jones was suddenly hurled into the storm of fame. The coal miner's son with a fiery voice now stood on the Vegas stage, chest exposed through open shirts, gold chain glinting, muscles rippling with every hip swivel. Female screams surged like waves, handkerchiefs, lingerie, even hotel room keys flew onto the stage. The press crowned him the sex symbol of music, and Jones did not deny it. On the contrary, he boasted openly that he could sleep with hundreds of women a year, a confession that shocked the public while carving deeper the image of the untamed Welsh Tiger. But behind the curtain, the one who paid the steepest price was Linda. The girl who once held his hand down the little Welsh streets now lived in a Los Angeles mansion, quietly reading tabloids about affairs or hearing whispers from friends about the women around her husband. She chose silence to protect the family, to spare her son the pain of a broken home, but silence did not mean submission. Once, when Tom returned from yet another affair, Linda's anger erupted. She punched him square in the face. Tom later admitted bitterly, "She hit me, and I knew I fully deserved it." What began as a marriage born of teenage responsibility had turned into a silent battlefield. A wife fiercely holding the family together with strength and endurance, and a husband who could never resist the temptations of the stage and strange arms. The love of youth that once saved him now bore deep, irreparable cracks, shadows trailing behind the glow of fame. Those cracks were widened not only by fleeting backstage flings, but by scandals that shook the entertainment world. In 1973, Jones was entangled with Marjorie Wallace, newly crowned Miss World and an international beauty icon. When intimate photos of the two surfaced, the press erupted. Wallace was stripped of her crown within months, a humiliating fall that left her broken, both publicly and privately. Jones, instead of appearing the hero, was vilified in the press as the man who ruined a beauty queen's future. Overnight, his aura was tainted, and he was branded as a dangerous man for any woman. It did not stop there. Jones became involved in a 2-year affair with Mary Wilson, lead singer of the Supremes. This was no casual fling, but long enough to wound. Linda, who had endured in silence for years, finally discovered the truth and confronted Mary directly. That moment, by all accounts, was one of the rare times Linda shed her mask of endurance. The confrontation not only shamed the Jones household, but cut deep into the heart of a woman already scarred by countless lonely nights. Another voice added to the dark portrait of Jones came from Cassandra Peterson, later famous as Elvira. She recalled that her first sexual encounter with Tom at the age of 17 was a nightmare. Without elaborating, her words were chilling enough to shake public perception, raising stark questions about the darker side of a man revered as a masculine idol. Once hailed as the Welsh Tiger, the man who could set any stage ablaze with passion and voice. By the late 1970s and into the 1980s, Tom Jones's style drew increasing criticism. His bare-chested shirts, flamboyant gestures, and overt sexual image were labeled by critics as cheap entertainment. As punk, disco, and later new wave surged as the sounds of a new generation, Jones was increasingly dismissed as a living relic of a bygone era. The very spotlight that once elevated him now weighed him down. Scandals piled up, transforming Tom Jones from a global star into one of entertainment's most divisive figures, celebrated as a legend, condemned as a symbol of showbiz excess. At the very moment his career faltered under changing tastes and rising criticism, a private catastrophe deepened the strain. In 1988, during a U.S. tour, Jones had a brief fling with young model Catherine Berkery. It lasted only a few days, yet its consequences would echo for decades. Catherine became pregnant and gave birth to a son, Jonathan. As news spread, Jones flatly denied responsibility, insisting the child was not his. The case quickly became tabloid fodder and ended in court. Presiding over the case was Judge Judy Sheindlin, who would later become a global TV star. Publicly, Jones maintained his denial, but DNA tests delivered an undeniable truth. With 99.76% certainty, Tom Jones was Jonathan's biological father. Instead of embracing the boy, Jones chose silence and avoidance. For over 20 years, he made no effort to connect. No visits, no letters, no gestures of acknowledgement. Jonathan grew up fatherless, sometimes even homeless, fighting to survive. In rare interviews, he spoke of his yearning simply to meet and talk with his father, not as a legend, but as a dad. That door, however, never opened. Not until 2008, after 2 decades of denial, did Tom Jones reluctantly admit in an interview that Jonathan was indeed his son. But the admission came too late, and with no reconciliation or amends. Father and son remained worlds apart. One a man who sang to millions, the other a boy forever scarred by abandonment. If earlier affairs only strained his marriage and tarnished his public image, the story of Jonathan left a deeper moral wound. It forced the question, how could a man capable of moving crowds with his voice not muster a single word of comfort for his own child? Amid lonely days in London, haunted by Linda's memory, Tom Jones appeared beside another familiar face, Priscilla Presley, once Elvis's wife. From 2017 to 2024, the press repeatedly reported on their relationship, 2 legends bound by the golden memories of the 1960s and 70s. They did not hide, appearing together at events, exchanging smiles and glances that spoke of late-found kinship after years of loss. What shocked the public most was the blessing of Mark Woodward, the son who had long guarded his mother's memory. Mark openly expressed happiness at seeing his father find joy with Priscilla, saying she brought Tom comfort no one else could. With family acceptance, the relationship became more than fleeting rumor. It was a warm breeze at life's end, helping Tom Jones step past the grief of losing Linda to keep singing, to keep living. Despite the storms of his private life, Tom Jones remains one of the rare artists who has both sustained a long-running career and amassed an enormous fortune. Experts estimate his net worth at around $300 million, an unbelievable figure for a boy who once lived in a cramped brick house on Laura Street in Pontypridd. His main income has always come from music. He has sold more than 100 million records worldwide, a milestone achieved by only a handful of artists in history. But what truly made Tom a money-printing machine was his long-running Las Vegas residency from 1967 all the way to 2011. From his earliest nights at the Flamingo Hotel, he was paid $100,000 per week, an enormous fee at the time, roughly equivalent to nearly $1 million a week today. In the 1970s and 80s, there were weeks when he earned millions from Vegas alone, making him the city's box office king. Add to that his sold-out international tours, his role as a coach on The Voice UK since 2012, and publishing royalty income, all of it flowing into a constant financial stream. Tom Jones didn't stop at the stage. He also showed a business savvy rare among singers of his era. Throughout the 1970s, as his income surged, he invested in real estate, took stakes in slot machine companies, and even got involved with an airline. These investments preserved his wealth even when public tastes shifted and his singing career slowed. The homes he owned became landmarks of different phases of his life. In 1976, Tom and Linda bought a Tudor-style Bel Air mansion once owned by Dean Martin. It became a sanctuary where he hosted entertainment world friends from Elvis Presley to Frank Sinatra. More than 20 years later, in 1998, the house was sold to Nicolas Cage for over $6.4 million. That same year, he and Linda purchased another Los Angeles property for $2.1 million, famous for its leopard print interiors, designed by Linda, lavish yet unmistakably personal to its mistress. After Linda's passing in 2016, Tom could no longer live amid rooms saturated with memories. He sold all his U.S. properties and returned to London, choosing a small flat as his base, where LA's glitter gave way to quiet, sometimes to the point of suffocation. He also once owned a residence in Wales complete with every luxury: a cinema, a private bar, a tennis court, an oasis where he and Linda could occasionally escape the noise of Vegas. The house stood as proof that no matter how high he climbed, Tom always looked back toward home. Beyond music and immense wealth, Tom Jones has stamped his lifestyle with distinctive luxuries and passions. He is renowned as a true car enthusiast. His garage once assembled four-wheeled marvels any speed devotee would dream of: the classic Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud, symbol of aristocratic class; the powerful, elegant Bentley Continental GT; the legendary Jaguar E-Type, often hailed as the most beautiful car in the world; the comfortable Range Rover Vogue for long journeys; and thoroughbreds like the Ferrari California and Ford Mustang GT. For Tom, each car was more than transport. It reflected a piece of who he is: dazzling yet masculine, freewheeling and full of passion. Beneath that luxurious exterior, though, Tom keeps simpler, homelier tastes. He loves golf, treating it as a way to maintain balance and discipline, things the stage lights can't provide. In fashion, Jones preserves the image of a refined gentleman, frequently appearing in sharply tailored suits paired with bold accessories: bracelets, rings, a deftly chosen scarf. Every appearance radiates the Welsh Tiger aura, classic yet modern, and never to be mistaken for anyone else. Though wealthy and accustomed to life in Los Angeles or London, his palate remains tied to traditional British fare: hearty roasts, crisp golden potatoes, warm puddings, all a thread back to a poor childhood in Pontypridd. He doesn't only enjoy life, he also devotes himself to charity. Throughout his career, he has quietly supported Nordhoff Robbins, using music as therapy, the Prince's Trust, founded by then Prince Charles, now King Charles III, to help disadvantaged youth, as well as musicaires and the Brit School, which nurtures young artistic talent. He never flaunts these contributions, and that discretion speaks to the deep sense of responsibility of an artist who has known every form of glory. Another indelible experience was a near drowning in Mexico. Swept out by waves on holiday, he nearly ran out of strength. In that moment at the edge of death, Tom believed a kind of miracle pulled him back. From that ordeal, his spiritual outlook was transformed. He began to view life as a guided journey, where every joy, loss, and even tragedy carries its own meaning. From then on, beyond the lights and cheers, he lived more slowly, more reflectively, grateful even for the falls that forged the man he became. In 2024, well into his 80s, Tom Jones still chose not to rest. On the contrary, he continued to demonstrate the rare stamina of a veteran artist, launching the Ages and Stages Tour 2024. After a run of shows in the UK and Europe, he brought the tour to North America in the fall, turning each stage into living proof of a voice unweathered by time. He didn't limit himself to plush theaters either. Jones also appeared at special cultural events, including Eisteddfod 2024, the traditional Welsh festival, as a way to honor the homeland that raised him. The British press noted that even with a packed schedule, Tom still appeared on familiar TV programs, including The Voice UK, where he continued as a veteran coach. His presence was more than musical expertise. It bridged generations, from newly minted talents to loyal fans who have followed him for 6 decades. In 2025, Tom Jones again proved that age has never been a barrier to music. He launched the Defying Expectations Tour 2025, a title that reads like a gauntlet thrown at time. In April, he blew the roof off a sold-out night at the Foxwoods Premier Theater. His resonant baritone and kinetic stagecraft left fans marveling that the man before them was in his mid-80s. A dense itinerary took him across Europe, including a memorable show at Tivoli, Denmark on July 19, 2025, where audiences were treated to a musical journey both intimate and explosive, melding tender ballads with the anthems that forged his name. The tour was slated to close with 2 nights in Cardiff, Wales at the end of August, a symbolic homecoming for the Welsh Tiger. Even so, the road was not without bumps. In July, Tom had to postpone a show in Bremen, Germany, due to an upper respiratory infection. A reminder that health, however hardy, becomes a greater challenge near 85. Yet only days later he returned to the stage, as if to prove the unbreakable bond between him and his audience. Offstage, Tom Jones has remained a fixture in popular culture. He has been confirmed to continue as a coach on The Voice UK, which will enter its 14th season in 2026. For younger viewers, Tom's image is no longer just tied to legendary hits, but also to a seasoned mentor inspiring newcomers at the start of their journeys. At 85, when many of his contemporaries have fully receded backstage, Tom Jones is still on the road, still in the television hot seat, and still radiating the star power that makes people exclaim, "That voice, that spirit, truly defies every expectation about age." Tom Jones's legacy cannot be measured only by 100 million records sold or hundreds of sold-out nights in Las Vegas. It also lies in the way he became a rare bridge between generations of listeners. From the golden 1960s with It's Not Unusual, Delilah, and She's a Lady, to the 21st century with Sex Bomb and the chart-topping Surrounded by Time, released in his 80s, Tom has never allowed his name to fade. His influence stretches across layers of artists. Elvis Presley once openly called Tom his inspiration to return to live performing, while modern acts like Robbie Williams, Stereophonics, and even Ed Sheeran have admitted the impact of his powerful baritone and explosive stage style. Through decades as a coach on The Voice UK, Tom has also directly mentored and guided younger singers, bringing his career full circle, from the boy inspired by blues, gospel, and Elvis Presley, to the master inspiring the next generation. He also helped reshape the image of the male performer on stage. If Elvis embodied iconic allure, Tom Jones represented unrestrained fire, sometimes called excessive, but also the very essence that made him one of the most potent sex symbols in music history. From turning the Vegas stage into a temple of entertainment to holding the honor of Cultural Night of Wales, his mark is unlike any other. Today, Tom Jones is remembered not only as a legendary voice, but also as living proof of resilience and reinvention. Nearing 85, he can still release a #1 album, still command stages before tens of thousands, and still touch the hearts of both young and old with his voice. If there is one thing that makes Tom Jones's legacy rise above statistics, it is his ability to transform failures, scandals, and personal tragedies into fuel to keep singing. As though every note is not just entertainment, but evidence that human beings can overcome themselves, no matter their age or their past shadows. Some voices shine briefly and vanish with fashion. Others become witnesses of time, carrying their weight through countless cycles of change. Tom Jones belongs to the latter, not because he never stumbled, but because every scar became a new layer of depth, so that when he sings, audiences hear not just music, but a life lived. Beyond the stage lights, perhaps his greatest legacy is not records or awards, but the proof that people may grow old, may suffer loss, may live with regret, but the longing to be loved and to sing until the very last breath never fades. And you, when looking back at this turbulent journey, what do you see in Tom Jones? A glittering icon, a lost soul, or a living testament to the power of human rebirth? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can continue uncovering the life stories behind the legends.